Republicans in the House must pass bills Americans want and then let Democrats in the Senate shoot them down. This needs to start immediately, and hopefully it is actually starting immediately. But this needs to become a trend. This needs to be done in earnest between now and Election Day 2026. The message here that they need to generate is that Democrats it's not that they're obstructing President Trump. It's not that they're obstructing Republicans. It's not even that they're obstructing progress or anything like that. The message needs to be that they are obstructing the will of the people. And the perfect example of this happened very recently. You had every Senate Democrat vote against a bill that would have prevented men and boys from competing in women's and girls' sports. This should be a no-brainer. 80% of the American population agrees with that concept. They don't want boys setting records in girls' sports. They don't want boys competing against girls. And yet every Senate Democrat voted against it. We need that on repeat every single week of Congress. We need to find the bills that the American people want. Bills that, and they have a wide range of them, maybe not nearly as popular or universally approved as the trans sports bill, but they can find bills where a majority of Americans agree with the bill. All they have to do is look to the executive orders that President Trump is putting out. Pick out the ones they want to codify, force them through the House, okay, and then get them to the Senate and have them shot down. Every time they get shot down, they need to go to independent media, Joe Rogan or Tucker Carlson or Glenn Beck or Megyn Kelly or J.D. Rucker, and they need to say, this is what the people want. They've made it clear. The polls show this. The reactions show that. Here's the results of President Trump's executive order. We went to codify it, and Democrats obstructed the will of the people. Democrats are obstructing the will of the people. That is the message that they need if they're going to reverse this trend, if they're going to have a chance of even getting a filibuster-proof majority in the Senate while retaining control of the House of Representatives. But like I said, it already is sort of happening. According to George Caldwell over at Daily Signal, GOP lawmakers aim to codify Trump's executive orders. GOP members on the Republican Study Committee promised Tuesday to fight to turn President Trump's executive orders into law. Representative August Pfluger, a Republican from Texas, chairman of the RSC, was joined at a news conference by a dozen other Republican lawmakers, each of them touting their legislation. Pfluger began the press conference by praising Trump's work to eliminate government waste, to secure our borders, and to push back against radical gender and DEI policies. The Texas lawmaker then promised that he and his fellow Republicans would codify the president's executive orders into law. He said, now our Republican-controlled Congress has a responsibility to reinforce and etch these victories into permanent law. One by one, Americans with the RSC took the microphone to pitch his or her legislation. Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, for example, spoke of her legislation to rename the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. Representative Pat Harrigan from North Carolina advocated making it more difficult for the executive branch to impose vaccine mandates on the nation's military troops. Representative Chip Roy from Texas proposed repealing the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances Act, which was weaponized by the Justice Department under Trump's predecessor, President Joe Biden, to prosecute and imprison pro-life activists who Trump pardoned soon after taking office on January 20th. Despite being confident of the support of fellow Republicans, the lawmakers face a likely partisan obstacle, namely getting enough Democratic votes in the Senate to invoke cloture on filibusters to allow for their bills to go to the Senate floor for a vote. That is, and they're not going to get Democrats to vote for them. They really aren't. They know this. But I mean, every single one of those bills that were listed there, proposed by Greene and Roy, Those are bills that the American people appreciate. Those are bills that the American people want turned into law. We also need to make sure to educate people that just because it's signed as an executive order, that's the weakest form of government that we have. People assume that, well, the President of the United States is the most powerful person. What they don't realize is that the executive order is the weakest possible form of government action. It falls below codifying legislation that can be turned into a law, and that falls below rulings from the Supreme Court. Generally speaking, there are exceptions to all those rules, but any executive order can be reversed by the next executive or even by the current executive. President Trump wanted to rename Gulf of America. If he wanted to rename it Gulf of Mexico tomorrow, he could do that. It's not that easy when you're dealing with legislation that's already been passed, and it's definitely not that easy when you're dealing with judgments from the Supreme Court from the past. Point being is that even if we have to use this and turn it into a show, even if we have to build a highlight reel that can be played over and over again, here's the legislation. This is what Americans want. Republicans passed it. Democrats obstructed the will of the American people. Here's another piece of legislation. 74% of Americans approve of it. 98% of Republicans got it passed. It's ready to go, but Democrats obstructed the will of the people. Rinse, repeat. Rinse, repeat. We need 60 Republicans, at least, in the Senate. It hasn't been done in a very, 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 very long time, but it can be done. President Trump's policies are very popular. The Republicans, all they need to do on Capitol Hill, all they need to do is follow President Trump's leads, take what he's putting out there, trying to codify it, and daring the Democrats to go against the will of the people, just like they did with boys and girls sports. They went against the will of the people and they have this reason or that reason. They all have their own individual reasons. But at the end of the day, they look like idiots, or at least they would if the Republican Party was better at expressing and getting the word out. They need to stop trying to get whoever, Jake Tapper, to side with them. They need to stop even going on these shows, really. I know that you might say, well, but aren't there still, you always say there's plenty of people that still watch them. Yes, I get it, but if they're not going to be allowed to put out the appropriate American message, if they're going to get pushback and lies, then it's time to, you know what? We're done. I don't know if that's the answer, but I do know that one way or the other, if they can figure out the strategy on how to get the word out to people, all I'm suggesting is that's what the word should be. Democrats are obstructing the will of the American people. They get that message out through independent media, legacy media, email, text message, billboards. I don't care. They have the money. They can do the research and figure out how best to get it out there. But get that message out there. And in the meantime, every day that they're around, every week that they can try to pass legislation, they should try. They should dare the Democrats to go against the will of the people. And they should dare them to do this as often as possible and then record about it and then talk about it and make Americans realize that the Democrats don't care about the will of the American people. Democrats only care about retaining their own power. And in 2026, it's time to take that power away from them. Thank you for watching that clip. I hope you loved it. 2 things now that you're done watching the clip. Number 1, find all my stuff and be sure to follow me on Rumble, YouTube, whatever, X, Getter, Brighteon, BitChute, those places. Go to jdrucker.com/find, jdrucker.com/find. Number 2, please help support our newest sponsor. You can go to jdrucker.com/infowars, jdrucker.com/infowars, and shop the Alex Jones store. Help to keep an important piece of the media alive and well. jdrucker.com/infowars.